Hey, what's up, guys? How you doing? It's me, Mr. 4K Upscaler. This is Resident Evil Vendetta on Samsung KS-8000. Now, some of you have been asking me why I haven't done TCL yet. TCL's coming too. I will do TCL P55 605 TV model as well. But first, I'm doing it with Samsung KS-8000. Once I'm finished doing Samsung KS-8000, all these 4K movies, then I'm going to go ahead and check him out on TCL 55P605. It's just, it takes time for me to do these videos, you know what I mean? So that's why you're just going to have to be a little bit patient and wait a little bit, and I will give you the calibration settings for TCL 55P605 as well, okay? But first, let's do Samsung KS-8000. As you can see, I already have calibrated this with my own custom picture settings that I chose based on this movie, CGI animated movie. I really haven't changed that much from what I have done on Starship Troopers Trader of Mars. Just a couple of touches here and there, but nothing too much, which I will show it to you once we get to custom picture settings. But first, let me go ahead and show you my stills from this movie so you can see the beauty of HDR on this Resident Evil Vendetta 4K UHD disc. For example, look at this scene here, just how beautifully HDR here it's rendered. Everything looks natural, from that light over here on the top and this one over here, from the light coming and overshadowing and reflecting on Chambers and Leon and Chris. So this movie and Starship Troopers, both Resident Evil and Starship Troopers Trader of Mars, they really did a fantastic job on HDR. And on both of these discs, you're getting, on both of these movies, you're getting a true HDR package. You're getting Dolby Vision and HDR. So you're getting a true HDR package here. Obviously, Dolby Vision will look a little bit better because each pixel would be detailed with peak brightness and color. But this is definitely a top-notch HDR here. You will not be disappointed. Like if you have a really good TV and you want to show off your 4K television, this will do it. This will do it for sure. And of course, Blade Runner will do it as well. And here's that another great example of HDR and peak brightness. Look at Leon, look at behind him, and look at that peak brightness of light. Obviously, it's hard for you guys to see this through camera on this video. But I do these videos to analyze, just to kind of give you my analysis on how the HDR looks. And that's what this really is. It's a two-part video. One, it's the analysis of HDR, and number two, it's the custom picture settings that I'm using. You have to keep in mind, you can't just have HDR turned on and you think that the HDR will do its magic and everything. It goes with a little bit of tweaking. You have to do some tweaking. You know, even on HDR, you gotta tweak your custom picture settings. You have to calibrate it based on the content that you're watching, okay? And even here, you get to see it, like when he moves next to Leon, you get to see like the peak brightness just popping out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my lamp off because you guys can see that reflection. So I'm going to turn that lamp off. I'm going to turn that light off so that way you guys can see a better detail. And of course here, you know, there is no shortage of detail here. Everything is detailed. And it looks gazillion times better in person, obviously. But one thing you will notice on this scene is that peak brightness overshadowing and reflecting the characters and everything in the room. All right. And I think the main reason why it looks so great here, because this disc contains both formats. static data and dynamic data. So it has both of those standards encoded in there to take the advantage of Dolby Vision and HDR. And I think that's why we're seeing such a great HDR detail here, because they already recorded and decoded this to be at a higher peak brightness. So this is why we're seeing such a great HDR here. Okay. And look, even here, like right here on this scene, just look at that. Look at those two lamps, those two lights overhead up there. Look at these two. And look how beautifully it's being reflected. It's just an outstanding, I would say this movie, Resident Evil, Vendetta, and Traitor of Mars, these two movies, honestly, if you want to show off your HDR and Dolby Atmos, and Dolby Vision, I'm sorry, HDR, Dolby Vision, and Dolby Atmos, it's a package deal with these two discs. It's truly a package deal. It's a great demo to show off your Dolby Vision and HDR, especially if you have E7 or B7 with Dolby Vision, and you pop in this disc, and if you have Oppo 203 with that C7 or E7 OLED TV, you're definitely going to have some wow factors going on for sure. I brought my camera a little bit closer. You can actually count each hair on his forearm, honestly. That's the type of a detail I'm talking about here. And it really, like, look right here. Look at his arm. And you can see every hair on his forearm. And then even here, look at his ear. And that redness on his ear, that's because of the light over reflecting that ear from the back here, and also the outside light reflecting as well. Because remember, we already have a light over here, overhead light, that's reflecting his backside and also his gear. And then we got this bright light that's coming from the outside. The reason I'm telling you all of this is just I'm trying to give you guys some sense of an idea what HDR is about. In a basic terms, what high dynamic range, it's about clarity, natural clarity. So you can see as if you were like in a real life walking somewhere, or in a room somewhere, or outside somewhere. It gives you that natural quality clarity. That's what it is. It's about clarity and natural feel. Both natural feel and look to it. So, clarity, natural look, and that's the end results of HDR. Now, Dolby Vision obviously goes to a higher peak brightness needs. That means that you will experience this in even more brighter detail. In such detail, depending on what kind of TV you have, that you could really immerse yourself and experience this the way it was meant to be experienced. You know what I mean? And I felt the same way with Blade Runner. It was almost like watching a brand new movie. That's if HDR is done correctly. If HDR it's rendered correctly, you know. And even here, look at the Rebecca Chambers. You know, just everything just pops naturally. You know, clarity, natural tone, natural look. It really feels three-dimensional. It just feels as if it's real, as if you're looking throughout the window, honestly. That's how it feels. And this is HDR. This is static metadata that goes up to what, 1100 nits? Or I think maximum is like 1200 nits. That's as maximum as HDR will go. I guess you could push it to 1400. I guess you could, depending on the scenes. But this looks fantastic on HDR. Now, just try to imagine if you have a really good TV, what kind of like peak brightness and detail you will see on Dolby Vision on this disc. So if you have a Oppo 203, or if you have a UDP 970 with that new update, then you'll be able to definitely experience Dolby Vision with this thing, and it's going to look even 5 times better than this. And here's another great example. Of course, again, natural tone of peak brightness popping out of the windows from the outside, reflecting the characters perfectly here. You know what I mean? It's just, I purposely brought it a little bit closer to the screen so you guys can see a little bit better. And this new update 1203 definitely has reduced that bending light, and you have much better uniformity now. A little bit better uniformity. It's not by much. There's still bending light, okay? It's impossible to get rid of that bending light. The only thing they can do is that they could try to tone it down a little bit. What I used my gamma -3 to keep it adjusted to as much as I could to those deep dark levels. But you know, it's an edge-lit TV, and you know, there's not much you can do about that. Look, even here, when he's looking through a monitor, this is a character looking through a monitor. And even him looking through a monitor, you still get that three-dimensional feel. This is within a video, and it still looks great. And even here, clearly, you know, that overhead light, peaking brightness on top of his head from that lamp that's overhead above him, clearly overshadows and over reflects his forehead and his gray hair. This is just one of the examples. Obviously, this looks much better in person. All right, so I moved my camera a little bit outwards so you guys can see a little bit better. But look at here, for example. Just look at the amount of detail, how everything looks natural here. That chair, that reflecting light that's coming from the sunset, overshadowing and over reflecting the Redfield, and then Leon, and then Chambers over here on the other side, right there. This is just one aspect, one example of it. You know what I mean? Like I said earlier, HDR in basic terms, it's about clarity and natural look of picture. And then here we go back here again from the outside, reflecting onto the table right here. I think my camera might be able to depict a little bit of it, but you have to trust me that this looks gazillion times better in person. You know, again, this video is not doing it justice. I'm just doing analysis. I'm just kind of like commentating and walking you through it and pointing out certain things here, but you really have to see this in person. Now, if you have a really good TV and you got an Oppo 303 and you got those HDMI cables with a chip built inside of them, you're gonna be like in heaven. Seriously, you could just be stoked how beautifully it looks. Even if you have a QLED, that Q9 QLED that's 2000 plus peak brightness nits, you're definitely going to appreciate this HDR here. It's just gonna pop with detail. All right, so I've shown you enough of stills here. Let's get back to custom picture settings, calibration here, which I'm going to do right now. Remember, I will do TCL as well. TCL will be done, okay? And the great thing about the TCL, once I get that LG UD UP970, I'll be able to do both HDR and Dolby Vision settings, okay, for the both. Okay, so, but that's coming soon. That will be done. I got so much stuff to get to. There's so many games, there's so many things happening in the Apple 4K TV and whatnot, and then the live streams. You know, I'm going to be very busy. So let's get back into this really quick, really fast, and let's go through the settings. Remember, this is Samsung KS-8000. Remember, make sure you download 1203 update. All right, let's go to the picture mode, expert settings, really quick right here. Always backlit and contrast automatically, it's going to be set to maximum. When you turn on the HDR format, any of the 4 HDR formats, it don't matter which ones you're using, when you turn on the HDR format, it's going to go ahead and turn the backlit and contrast to maximum. Okay. Brightness, I don't mess with the brightness because I already have my gamma -3, so it would make no sense for me to move the brightness lower. If I did that, then I would crush the deep dark levels on this movie and it would just make the entire experience look ridiculous. Okay, I have seen people with brightness all the way to 20 and I'm like, what are you doing? I've seen people do brightness to 20 and then color to 80. I was like, are you kidding me? Now, sharpness, I moved it up to 22. The main reason I did this because I really want this CGI, this animated movie, to pop out of the screen. And it really does with the sharpness to 22. This is not like overkill. This is like within the threshold. 20 is the threshold. I just went 2 clicks up because I wanted to give it that nice outline pop. Remember, this sharpness 22 will not work for Blade Runner. Blade Runner, you got to leave it at 0 because Blade Runner has that grain, that celluloid film. Okay, so you want to leave that at 0. This is why I always tell people there are no universal calibration things because these universal standards don't work for everything, okay? Because they don't know what type of a content you're watching. Your eyes know what type of a content you're watching. That standard calibration system doesn't know what type of content you're watching, okay? So, let's go ahead. Let's go back to it. Remember, backlit, contrast stays at the maximum, brightness at 50, sharpness at 22. Here, let me move my low light so you guys can see a little bit better. Also, make sure you write the stuff down. Sharpness at 22. Color, I moved the color to 62 because I felt I needed a little bit more of that color to pop. I'm not oversaturating anything. I just moved it 12 clicks from 50 to 62. That's 12 clicks up. That is not oversaturating. If I went to 72 or 82, especially if you jump into 72 to 75, then you are stepping into oversaturation. 62 is just the right amount of color for this thing to pop. Automotion Plus, you can definitely use it because this new update, 1203, definitely makes it less juddery, less blurry, and just looks much clearer, much better, okay? There's a tiny minute of blur on like very fast scenes, but it's like for half a second. And you only see it for like half a second, that's it. Which your eyes will have a hard time seeing that to begin with. Smart LEDs, you want them high because you want to take the advantage of that peak brightness nits. So you always keep the smart LEDs at high when you're watching HDR. If you're not watching HDR, you can move them down to low. But since you're watching HDR, you definitely want to have this at high at all time. And of course, color of tone has to be, to me personally, color of tone, it's always standard. All right? I always keep that thing at standard. So color of tone, I like to always keep it at standard because I like to have my tone of color in between yellow and blue. Meaning, I don't like to have that yellow temperature too yellow, nor do I like to have that cold temperature too cold, bluish. Okay, so I like to keep it in between the yellow, warm, and cold blue to keep that balance of color, temperature, tone. To keep the, it's all about the balance, see, that's what this is about. It's about finding that balance, equilibrium, tone of color. And that's why you keep it at standard. And another trick here, it's obviously gamma -3. I keep mine a gamma -3 only on this television because it's an edge-lit television. If this thing wasn't an edge-lit, if it had a full array of local dimming, I would leave it at 0. I wouldn't mess with it. But since this TV is not a full array of local dimming, you have to move that gamma a little bit to -3. And I left it at -3 for that reason, because I'm trying to get those deep dark levels, okay? And as always, I keep my color space at native. I like to have that native color spectrum. So there you go. That's the kind of color space I like to have, native color space. So hopefully this video helps you out with Samsung KS-8000 and the calibration. Remember, this will only work on a Samsung KS-8000, all right? Or 9000 series. Doesn't matter if it's a 55, 65, as long as it's 8000 series, it'll work. Or if you have a 9000 series, it will work as well. QLED might be a little bit different because it's a 2000 peak brightness nit, so I don't know about the QLED, okay? There will be TCL, but I'm not sure when I'm going to do that, but the TCL calibration will be there as well. I'm going to be working on that as well. As you all know, I have a lot of stuff to do. I'll be very busy throughout the coming weeks and the months, especially with the Xbox One X. We got, what, 38 days or like less than a month to go. So I'll be very, very busy. So there you go. Pick this movie up. Looks fantastic. It's a great movie. It has a truckload of features. Has Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos, full Dolby package, and of course, excellent HDR 10 as well. So there you have it. Thank you for watching. Have a good one, guys. Take care.